You're standing in your kitchen at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and your phone is ringing. Not buzzing, not chiming. Ringing. That old-fashioned sound you programmed in years ago because it reminded you of simpler times, of landlines attached to walls, of conversations that mattered. Your hand freezes over the counter. The name on the screen shouldn't be there. It's been 6 years. 6 years, 2 months, and 14 days since you last heard his voice. Not that you've been counting, except you have, every single day, in the hollow space where your son used to be. The phone keeps ringing. Your heart is trying to climb out of your chest. You can feel it in your throat, taste it like copper on your tongue. Outside, the wind pushes against the windows. The refrigerator hums. The clock on the microwave blinks because you never fixed it after that power outage 3 months ago. Everything is exactly as it should be, except for this phone, this name, this impossible moment that you've rehearsed in your mind 10,000 times, but never believed would actually happen. Michael, your son, the boy who used to fall asleep on your shoulder during long car rides, the young man who looked you in the eye 6 years ago and said words that carved themselves into your bones. I never want to see your face again. And now he's calling. At 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. You don't know whether to answer or let it ring into the silence that's been your only companion for so long. Your finger hovers, the ringing continues. And in that endless second, you're not standing in your kitchen anymore. You're drowning in the memory of everything that brought you here, to this impossible moment, to this call that shouldn't exist. But let me take you back. Let me show you what normal looked like before the world turned inside out. My name is David. I'm 45 years old, though I feel like I've lived several lifetimes in this skin. I'm a father, or at least I was. I'm not sure what I am anymore. But there was a time not so long ago when I knew exactly who I was. I was the man who woke up at 5:30 every morning to make breakfast before anyone else stirred. I was the man who worked 2 jobs so my kids could have music lessons and summer camps and college funds. I was the man who believed that love was a verb, not just a feeling. That if you showed up, if you tried, if you gave everything you had, that would be enough. I was wrong. But before I understood that, before everything shattered, there were Sunday mornings. God, those Sunday mornings. I can still smell them if I close my eyes. Pancakes on the griddle, bacon sizzling, coffee percolating in that old machine my father gave us as a wedding present. Sarah would come down first, my daughter, always my early bird, her hair messy from sleep, wearing one of my old t-shirts that hung down to her knees. She'd climb onto the counter. Even at 16, she'd climb onto that counter and steal pieces of bacon while I pretended not to notice. Dad, she'd say, her voice still scratchy with dreams. Are you making the chocolate chip ones? Is the sky blue? I'd answer. The same exchange we'd had 1,000 times. Comfortable as an old sweater. Michael would stumble down next. My son, my firstborn, all teenage attitude and hidden softness. He'd grunt his good morning, but then he'd hip check me away from the stove and flip the pancakes himself, because he said I always burned them on one side. Which was true. Which was our thing. He'd take over the cooking, and I'd make stupid jokes, and Sarah would laugh too loud at all of them, because she knew it made me happy. And then Jennifer would appear, my wife of 23 years, and she'd kiss my cheek and pour herself coffee and tell the kids to get their elbows off the table, and we'd all sit down together in the morning light, filtering through the yellow curtains she'd hung when we first moved into this house, when the kids were small and life was just beginning. That was normal. That was my life. That was everything I thought I understood about love. We'd eat together, all 4 of us, passing syrup and butter and stories about the week ahead. Michael would complain about his chemistry teacher. Sarah would talk about the audition for the school play. Jennifer would remind everyone about dental appointments and permission slips. And I'd sit there, my heart so full it hurt, thinking, this is what I work for. This is what matters. I was proud of them. God, I was so proud. Michael was in his junior year of college, studying engineering like I'd always dreamed of doing, but never had the chance. He was brilliant. Scholarships, dean's list, the whole thing. Sarah was going to be a senior in high school, already talking about pre-med programs, already planning to save the world one patient at a time. They were good kids. No, they were great kids. The kind of kids who said please and thank you, who called their grandparents on birthdays, who volunteered at the food bank on Thanksgiving. I trusted them completely. I trusted Jennifer completely. That was my first mistake. Not the trusting itself, but the believing that trust was bulletproof, that family was sacred, that the people who knew you best couldn't possibly hurt you the deepest. I worked hard. I need you to understand that. I wasn't perfect. God knows I wasn't perfect. But I showed up. Every single day I showed up. I worked at the manufacturing plant from 6 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. Then I'd go to my second job at the hardware store until 9 at night. Weekends, I did odd jobs, fixing roofs, painting houses, whatever paid. The bills didn't care about my exhaustion. College tuition didn't care that my back ached. The mortgage didn't care that I hadn't taken a vacation in 8 years, but I didn't mind. Or maybe I did mind, but it felt worth it because I was building something, a life, a future, security for the people I loved. I thought sacrifice was the same as love. I thought providing was the same as being present. Maybe that's where I went wrong. Maybe while I was out there working myself into dust, trying to give them everything, I missed the moments that mattered. Maybe they needed me there, not my paycheck. Maybe I should have noticed the distance growing, the way conversations got shorter, the way everyone seemed to have secrets that didn't include me. But I didn't notice. Not at first. The first sign came on a Wednesday evening in October. I remember because the leaves were that impossible orange that only happens in Michigan in autumn. And I'd come home early, rare for me, because I'd gotten off my second shift at 4 instead of 9. A water main break had shut down the hardware store. I pulled into the driveway, happy for once to be home before dark, thinking maybe I'd surprise everyone. Maybe we could watch a movie together, make popcorn, be a family in the middle of the week instead of waiting for Sunday morning. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. The kind of silence that has weight to it, that presses against your skin. "Hello?" I called out, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. "Anyone home?" Muffled voices from the kitchen, low, urgent. I smiled, thinking maybe they were planning a surprise for my birthday next week. I walked softly down the hallway, wanting to pretend I didn't know, wanting to play along with whatever they were scheming. But as I got closer to the kitchen door, I realized the voices weren't excited. They were tense, worried, and they were talking about someone with a tone I'd never heard before. Contemptuous, almost cruel. I stopped walking. My hand reached for the door frame to steady myself. "Can't keep doing this," Jennifer was saying. "He's going to find out eventually." "Let him find out." That was Michael's voice, hard in a way I didn't recognize. "I'm so tired of pretending everything's fine." "Michael, stop." Sarah's voice pleading. "This isn't helping." "Nothing helps," Michael shot back. "We've been walking on eggshells for years. I can't do it anymore. I won't." "Keep your voice down," Jennifer hissed. "He could come home any time." A long pause. Then Sarah so quiet I almost didn't hear. "Do you think he knows? That we all feel this way?" "If he does, he's never said anything," Jennifer answered, which is typical. He never talks about anything that matters. My heart stopped. Just stopped dead in my chest like someone had reached in and squeezed it to silence. They were talking about me. My family, my wife, my children, the people I would die for without hesitation. They were talking about me like I was a problem to be solved, a burden to be carried. I stood there in the hallway, one hand on the doorframe, the other pressed against my mouth to keep any sound from escaping. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Seconds, minutes. Long enough for the conversation to continue, for more words to cut into me like glass. "I just feel so trapped," Jennifer said. And there was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Relief, maybe. Or freedom. The freedom of saying out loud what she'd been thinking in silence. Like I've been playing a role for so long I don't even know who I am anymore. You're not the only one, Michael muttered. I should have burst through that door. I should have demanded answers, confrontation, truth. But I didn't. I turned around and walked back down the hallway, out the front door to my truck in the driveway. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house I'd painted last summer, the lawn I'd mowed every Saturday, the windows I'd replaced 2 winters ago. And I thought, when did I become a stranger in my own life? I waited 30 minutes before I went back inside, making sure to slam the door, to call out a loud hello, to give them time to stop talking, to rearrange their faces into the masks they wore around me. They were all in the living room when I walked in, smiling, normal. Jennifer asked about my day. Michael was on his phone. Sarah was doing homework at the coffee table. Hey, Dad, she said, bright as sunshine. You're home early. Yeah, I managed. Water main break. Want me to heat up dinner? Jennifer offered. There's leftover lasagna. Sure, thanks. We ate together that night. We made small talk. We were a family. But I couldn't stop hearing their voices from earlier. Couldn't stop feeling the weight of their words pressing down on my chest like stones. He never talks about anything that matters. I feel so trapped. I'm tired of pretending. I looked at Michael across the table. This young man who'd grown up into someone I apparently didn't know anymore. I looked at Sarah, who could smile at me while harboring feelings she'd never shared. I looked at Jennifer, my wife, my partner, the woman I'd built this whole life with. And I realized I didn't know any of them. Not really. Maybe I never had. That was the first crack. The first moment I understood that something was deeply, terribly wrong. But it was only the beginning. After that night, I started noticing things I'd been blind to before. Or maybe they'd always been there and I'd just been too tired, too trusting, too stupidly hopeful to see them. Jennifer's phone. She'd always been casual about it before, leaving it on the counter, face up, unlocked. But now she carried it everywhere, to the bathroom, to the bedroom. She'd get texts and her whole body would tense before she even looked at the screen. She'd angle away from me when she typed responses. She'd silence calls without answering them, then step outside to call back. Who was that? I asked once. Just my sister, she said without looking at me. But her sister's name hadn't been on the screen. I'd seen that much before she tilted the phone away. I told myself I was being paranoid. Marriage counselors always talked about trust, about not being controlling, about giving your partner space. So I gave her space. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I gave her everything except my suspicion. Michael came home less and less from college. He'd make excuses. Too much homework, study groups, a project due. But then I'd see photos on social media of him at parties, at football games, out with friends, just never home, never here. When he did come home, he was different, distant. He'd stay in his room most of the time. He'd wear earbuds at dinner. He'd give one-word answers to my questions. How's school? Fine. How's the engineering program? Good. Need anything? Money? Help with anything? Nope. And then he'd excuse himself and disappear back upstairs, and I'd be left sitting there wondering when my son who used to tell me everything, who used to come to me with problems and dreams and random thoughts at midnight, when that boy had been replaced by this stranger who couldn't stand to be in the same room as me. Sarah was subtler about it, but I noticed with her too. She stopped asking me to help with her homework. She stopped showing me her artwork. She stopped inviting me to her school events. Sarah, your mom said you have a choir concert next week, I mentioned one evening. She looked up from her phone, surprised I knew. Oh, yeah. I'll be there. What time? Something crossed her face. Was it disappointment? Resignation? You don't have to come, Dad. I know you're busy with work. I'm never too busy for you. It's fine. She looked back down at her phone. It's just a small thing anyway. But when I showed up at that concert, having traded shifts and driven straight from the plant still in my work clothes, I saw her face in the audience. She looked shocked to see me there. And not happy shocked, just shocked. Like I'd violated some unspoken rule by caring, by showing up, by trying. I watched her sing that night, my daughter, and she was beautiful and talented and completely unreachable. She never looked at me once during the entire performance. Afterward, when parents were congratulating their kids, she hugged her friends, laughed with her teacher, took photos with everyone except me. You did great, I told her in the car on the way home. Thanks. Silence, the kind that aches. Sarah, is everything okay? Yeah, why? I just, I feel like we don't talk like we used to. She stared out the window. I'm just busy, Dad. Growing up, you know? But it wasn't that. I knew it wasn't that. This wasn't normal teenage independence. This was intentional distance, deliberate. And at home, the three of them, Jennifer, Michael, Sarah, they'd have conversations that stopped when I entered the room. They'd share looks I wasn't meant to understand. They'd laugh at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Once, I walked into the kitchen and all three of them were huddled around Jennifer's laptop, looking at something on the screen. They were animated, excited, talking over each other. What are you looking at? I asked, genuinely curious, wanting to be included. The laptop slammed shut. Three faces turned toward me, guilty as criminals. Nothing, Jennifer said too quickly. Just looking at furniture. Oh yeah? For where? Just ideas for redecorating. We're redecorating? Maybe. Haven't decided yet. The conversation died there. They dispersed like smoke. And I was left standing in the kitchen, feeling like an intruder in my own home. I started finding things, small things at first. Receipts for purchases I didn't know about. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. Hotel stays on weekends I thought Jennifer had been visiting her mother. Purchases from stores we didn't shop at. Honey, what's this charge from the Riverside Inn? She barely glanced at the credit card statement. Oh, that was when Mom and I went to that spa day, remember? That's a hotel, not a spa. They have a spa in the hotel, David. God, do I need to explain every purchase to you now? Her defensiveness was new. Or maybe it wasn't new. Maybe I was just finally noticing it. I found a second phone charger in her car. The expensive kind, the fast charging one. But it wasn't for her phone. Wrong model. Whose charger is this? I asked, holding it up. She looked at it like it might explode. I don't know. Maybe it's Sarah's? But Sarah's phone didn't use that charger either. I found hotel room keys in Michael's jacket when I went to take it to the cleaners. His jacket that he'd left at home over winter break. Keys from a hotel near his college. 2 different rooms, same weekend, 6 months ago. I found drawings in Sarah's sketchbook when I was cleaning her room. Drawings of our family, but I wasn't in them. Just the 3 of them. Jennifer, Michael, Sarah, smiling, happy, together. I was erased. Each discovery was small. Each one had a possible innocent explanation. But together, they added up to something I didn't want to acknowledge. Something heavy and cold settling into my bones. My family was keeping secrets from me. Not little secrets. Not surprise party secrets. Deep secrets. The kind that require coordination. The kind that require all of them to be on the same team. And that team wasn't Team David. I tried to talk to Jennifer about it one night, after the kids had gone to bed. Can we talk? I asked, sitting down on our bed while she did her nighttime routine in the bathroom. About what? About us. About everything. I feel like something's wrong. She came to the bathroom doorway, toothbrush in hand. What do you mean? I mean, I feel like you're pulling away. Like all of you are pulling away. Like I'm losing you and I don't know why. She stared at me for a long moment, and I couldn't read her expression. Was it pity? Guilt? Annoyance? David, you're being paranoid. Am I? Because it feels like you work all the time, she interrupted. You're exhausted. You're stressed. Maybe you're just projecting. Projecting what? I don't know. Your own feelings onto us. Maybe you're the one pulling away and you're blaming us for it. The words hit like a slap. I'm pulling away? I work 2 jobs to support this family. I do everything for you guys. We didn't ask you to work 2 jobs, she said quietly. I felt like I'd been punched. What? We didn't ask for that. You decided that's what you needed to do. But maybe what we needed was you here, present, not just paying bills, but actually being part of the family. I am part of this family. Are you? She looked at me with eyes that seemed to belong to a stranger. When's the last time you asked me about my day? My life? My dreams? When's the last time you had a real conversation with your kids about anything other than their grades or their plans? That's not fair. I, you're so busy being the provider that you forgot how to be a person, she continued, and there was no anger in her voice, just weariness, just resignation. You forgot how to be my husband, their father. You became this machine that goes to work and comes home and goes to work again. And we've been living around you, not with you. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list all the sacrifices I'd made, all the things I'd given up, all the ways I tried to show love through action because I didn't have the energy for words. But I couldn't speak. Because somewhere in the deepest part of me, I wondered if she was right. She went back into the bathroom, finished brushing her teeth, washed her face, got into bed beside me. We lay there in the dark, inches apart, separated by miles. Jennifer, I whispered, I'm tired, David. Can we not do this tonight? Do what? Whatever this is, whatever you're trying to fix. Some things can't be fixed with a conversation. She turned away from me, pulled the blanket up around her shoulders, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing slow into sleep, wondering when exactly everything had broken and why I was the last one to notice. I started following them. I'm not proud of it. I'm not even sure what I hoped to find. Maybe I wanted proof that I was wrong, that I was being paranoid, like Jennifer said, that everything was fine and I was just tired and stressed and imagining problems that didn't exist. But I found the opposite. I found that on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, when Jennifer said she had book club, she actually went to a coffee shop and sat with a man I didn't recognize. They didn't touch. They didn't kiss. But they talked for hours, leaning close, laughing, looking at each other the way Jennifer used to look at me 20 years ago. I found that Michael was coming home on weekends, just not to our house. He was staying with a family friend 3 blocks away, the Richardsons, people we'd known for years. I only discovered this when I drove past their house one Saturday and saw his car in their driveway. I sat there for 40 minutes, watching, until he came out with Mrs. Richardson, both of them laughing about something. He'd been that close, 3 blocks, and hadn't come to see me. I found that Sarah had been going to therapy, not the kind I knew about, not the school counselor I'd signed papers for. Private therapy. Paid for with Jennifer's credit card? I only found out because I saw the recurring charge and Googled the doctor's name. Why did my daughter need a therapist I didn't know about? What was she working through that I couldn't help with? What was so wrong that they needed to hide it from me? I confronted Jennifer about the coffee shop man. Who is he? She didn't even try to lie. A friend. A friend I've never met? A friend you have coffee with twice a week and never mentioned. His name is Daniel. He's a colleague from work. We talk about books, about life, about things that matter. Things that matter? I repeated, incredulous. What does that mean? It means he listens, David. He asks questions and actually cares about the answers. He sees me as a person, not just a wife and mother, and I see you as a person. Do you? She looked at me with something close to pity. When's the last time you asked me what I was reading? What I was thinking about? What I wanted for myself beyond this house and this life? I opened my mouth and closed it again. I couldn't remember. He's just a friend, she said again, softer this time. But yes, he's a friend I need. Because I've been lonely, David. So lonely. And you never noticed. She walked away, leaving me standing there with words I couldn't form, arguments I couldn't make, because somewhere deep down, I knew she was right. I'd been so busy trying to provide that I'd forgotten to connect. I'd been so focused on giving them a good life that I'd stopped being part of that life. But knowing I'd failed didn't make the betrayal hurt less. Knowing I'd been absent didn't erase the fact that they'd all decided to exclude me, to build a world without me, to plan a future that apparently didn't include the man who'd sacrificed everything for them. And then came the night that changed everything. It was March. Cold. The kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. I'd picked up an extra shift at the hardware store, covering for someone who was out sick. I wasn't supposed to be home until 11, but the store was dead, and my manager let me leave early. I pulled into the driveway at 8:30 p.m. The lights were on in the living room and kitchen. 3 cars in the driveway, Jennifer's, Sarah's, and Michael's. Michael was home, my son was home, and he hadn't told me he was coming. I felt a spark of something, hope, maybe, thinking maybe this was it. Maybe they were planning a surprise, maybe all my suspicions and paranoia were wrong, and they were going to tell me they loved me, that they appreciated me, that I mattered. I walked in through the back door, quiet, out of habit, and I heard voices in the dining room. All of them. Talking, laughing, the sound of papers rustling, a bottle being opened, wine from the sound of it. I started to walk toward them, started to announce myself, started to join whatever this was. But then I heard Michael say, "So the lawyer said we could do it this way." And my feet stopped moving. Lawyer? And he's sure Dad won't be able to contest it? Sarah asked. My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. He said it'll be tricky, Jennifer answered. But if we do it right, if we document everything properly, we can make the case, especially with the therapist backing us up about the emotional neglect. Emotional neglect. The words echoed in my head like bells in an empty church. I just want it over with, Michael said, and there was so much bitterness in his voice it didn't even sound like him anymore. I want to be done pretending we're a family. We are a family, Jennifer corrected gently. Just not the one he thinks we are. Not anymore. I stood there in the dark of the kitchen, one hand pressed against the wall to keep myself upright. My vision was swimming. My chest was tight. I couldn't breathe properly. They were planning to leave me. Not just leave. They were planning something legal, something documented, something that required lawyers and therapists and evidence. What about the house? Sarah asked. It's in both our names, Jennifer said. But with everything we've documented, the lawyer thinks I can get it. Plus child support for Sarah until she's 18 and probably some of the college funds. He'll fight it, Michael said. Let him fight, Jennifer replied, and her voice was steel. We have years of documentation, therapy records, financial records showing he prioritized work over family, witnesses who can testify to his emotional absence. He doesn't have a case. I couldn't listen anymore. I turned around and walked back out the way I came, careful not to make a sound, careful not to let them know I'd been there, that I'd heard, that I knew. I got in my truck and drove. I don't know where. Somewhere. Nowhere. I ended up in a parking lot by the lake, the water black and infinite under the moonless sky. And I sat there and I cried. I cried the way I hadn't cried since I was a child, the way I taught myself not to cry, because men don't cry, providers don't cry, fathers don't cry. I cried until my throat was raw and my chest ached, and there were no more tears left, just this hollow, gasping emptiness where my heart used to be. They weren't just leaving. They were building a case against me. They were painting me as a villain, an emotionally neglectful, absent father and husband. They were taking therapy records and financial statements and witness testimonies and constructing a narrative where I was the bad guy, where everything that had gone wrong was my fault, where they were the victims who deserved everything and I deserved nothing. And the worst part, the part that made me want to drive my truck into that black water and never come up, was that they weren't entirely wrong. I had been absent. I had prioritized work. I had given them money instead of time, security instead of presence, a roof over their heads instead of a shoulder to cry on. But I'd done it for them. Every single hour of overtime, every extra shift, every sacrifice, it had all been for them. To give them opportunities I never had. To make sure they never wanted for anything. To be the kind of provider my father never was. And they hated me for it. They were so busy resenting what I hadn't given them that they couldn't see what I had. They were so focused on my failures that my successes, keeping us afloat, keeping the bills paid, keeping them fed and clothed and educated, didn't matter at all. I drove home 3 hours later. The lights were off. Everyone was in bed. I lay down next to Jennifer in our bed, in the dark, and I wondered how many more nights we had before she executed whatever plan they'd been discussing. I wondered if I should fight it, get my own lawyer, contest whatever they were trying to do. But I was so tired. God, I was so tired. And what would I be fighting for? A family that didn't want me? A wife who felt lonely beside me? Children who counted the days until they could escape? Maybe the kindest thing I could do was let them go. Maybe that's what love looked like now, stepping aside. The next few months were a slow-motion nightmare. I lived in that house like a ghost, present but not really there, watching my family move through their days pretending everything was normal, while I carried the weight of what I knew. I started going to therapy myself, found a counselor in the next town over where no one would recognize me. Dr. Morrison, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a steady voice. "Tell me what brings you here," she said in our first session. And I told her everything about the overheard conversations, about the secrets, about the lawyer and the documentation, and the plan to paint me as emotionally neglectful. "And are you?" she asked. "Emotionally neglectful?" The question hit me like a hammer. I work hard. I provide for them. That's not what I asked. I sat there in that quiet office with its plants and soft lighting, and I forced myself to really think about it. When was the last time I'd had a meaningful conversation with my son? When was the last time I'd asked my daughter about her dreams instead of her grades? When was the last time I'd held my wife's hand just to hold it, not because we were walking somewhere or because it was expected? "I don't know," I finally answered. "I don't know how to be what they need. I only know how to be what I am." "And what are you?" "Tired. I'm so tired." Dr. Morrison leaned forward. "David, let me ask you something. If you could wave a magic wand and have any relationship with your family, what would it look like?" I thought about Sunday mornings, pancakes and bacon and laughter, Sarah stealing food from the pan, Michael making stupid jokes, Jennifer kissing my cheek, all of us together in the morning light. "I want them to want me there," I whispered. "I want to matter to them the way they matter to me." "Then you need to show them that. Not through money or work or providing, through presence, through vulnerability, through actually being there, not just physically, but emotionally." "I don't know how." "Then learn." So I tried. God, I tried. I started coming home earlier, turning down overtime shifts. I asked Sarah about her art, really asked, sat down and looked at her drawings and asked what inspired them. I called Michael at college, not to check on his grades, but just to talk, to hear his voice, to tell him I missed him. I planned a date night with Jennifer, made reservations at a nice restaurant, bought her flowers, asked her about her life, her books, her dreams. But it was too late. Sarah looked uncomfortable when I showed interest in her art, like I was invading a private space that wasn't meant for me. Michael's answers on the phone were short, polite, distant, the tone you'd use with an acquaintance, not your father. Jennifer went to the date night dinner, but she spent most of it checking her phone, smiling at messages I wasn't privy to, clearly wishing she was somewhere else. They'd already decided who I was. They'd already written the story where I was the villain, and nothing I did now could change the narrative. I was too late. Years too late. The confrontation came in late June, on what should have been a beautiful summer evening. Michael had come home for a few days before heading to a summer internship. The four of us were supposed to have dinner together, a rare occurrence these days. I'd taken the night off from both jobs. Jennifer had made pot roast, Michael's favorite. We sat down at the table and the tension was thick enough to cut. No one was talking. Everyone was focused on their plates. "So, Michael," I started, trying to break the silence. "Tell us about this internship. What will you be doing?" "Engineering stuff," he said without looking up. "That's great. Where is it again?" "Boston." "Boston? That's exciting. What company?" "Does it matter?" The words were sharp, angry. I set down my fork. "Of course it matters. I'm interested in your life." He laughed, a bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "Now you're interested? Where was that interest the last 5 years?" "Michael," Jennifer warned. But he was done being careful. "No, Mom, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of pretending." He looked at me directly for the first time in months, and his eyes were full of fury. "You want to know about my life? You want to suddenly play the caring father? Where were you when I actually needed you?" "I've always been here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Physically, maybe, but that's it. You were a walking paycheck, Dad. A ghost who paid the bills and showed up to occasionally sleep here. You don't know me. You don't know any of us." "That's not fair." "Fair?" He slammed his hand on the table. "You want to talk about fair? You know what wasn't fair? Growing up with a father who cared more about overtime than my baseball games? Who missed my graduation because of work? Who never once asked me how I was doing, really doing, not just what my GPA was." "I was working so you could go to college," I shot back. "So you could have opportunities I never had." "I never asked for that." His voice cracked. "I asked for a dad. That's all I ever wanted. A dad who was there, who gave a shit, who saw me as more than just another bill to pay." Sarah was crying now, quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. Jennifer sat frozen, her hands in her lap. "I did the best I could," I said, and I hated how weak my voice sounded. "Well, your best wasn't good enough." Michael stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore." "Michael, wait." "No, I'm done waiting. I've been waiting my whole life for you to wake up, to notice us, to be the father you were supposed to be. But you never did. You never will. Please, son. Don't call me that." His words were ice. "You don't get to call me that anymore. You lost that right." He walked to the door, grabbed his keys from the hook. "Michael, please." I was begging now, standing, reaching toward him. "Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out. I'll do better. I'll change. Just tell me what you need." He turned around and the look on his face. I'll never forget it. Disgust, pity, finality. "I need you to leave me alone," he said quietly. "I need you to understand that I never want to see your face again. I don't need your money. I don't need your apologies. I don't need anything from you except distance." "You don't mean that." "I've never meant anything more in my life." And then he left. Just walked out the door, got in his car, drove away. I stood there in the dining room, shaking, tears I couldn't control streaming down my face. I looked at Jennifer, at Sarah, desperately hoping they'd say something, anything to tell me this wasn't real, that we could fix this. But Jennifer just looked sad. Resigned, like she'd known this was coming and had made her peace with it long ago. And Sarah wouldn't meet my eyes. "I think," Jennifer said softly, standing up and clearing her plate, "we all need some space." That was it. That was all she said. Like my son hadn't just disowned me. Like my family hadn't just imploded over pot roast and accusations. I went upstairs to our bedroom and locked the door and cried until I made myself sick. The next day, Jennifer asked me to move out. "Not permanently," she said. "Just for a while. just until everyone could cool down and think clearly. But we both knew what that meant. The wheels were already in motion, the lawyers were already hired, the documentation was already compiled. This was the beginning of the end. I moved into a studio apartment on the other side of town, took my clothes and a few personal items, and left everything else: the house, the furniture, the memories. Jennifer filed for divorce 3 weeks later. The papers cited irreconcilable differences and years of emotional neglect. She was asking for the house, full custody of Sarah, who was still 17, child support, spousal support, and half of everything else. My lawyer, I'd finally hired one, though I could barely afford it, said we could fight some of it, said the emotional neglect claim was subjective, that working hard to provide wasn't the same as abandonment. But I didn't want to fight. What would I be fighting for? They didn't want me. They'd made that clear. And dragging this out through court battles would only hurt Sarah more, would only give Michael more reasons to hate me, would only make Jennifer more bitter. So I agreed to most of it. Let her have the house, agreed to support payments, signed papers that formalized what had already been true. I was no longer part of this family. Sarah stopped talking to me entirely, wouldn't return my calls, blocked my number. When I tried to show up at the house to see her, Jennifer told me I needed to respect boundaries, that Sarah would reach out when she was ready. She never was. Michael sent me one email after he heard about the divorce. Good. She deserves better. They both do. That was it. 7 words, and then silence. I lost my family in the space of a summer. Lost them to years of mistakes I didn't know I was making, to good intentions that paved a highway straight to hell, to a version of love that looked like sacrifice but felt like abandonment. The divorce was finalized in November. Jennifer got everything she asked for. I paid what I was ordered to pay. I moved through my days like a zombie, working my 2 jobs not because I needed to anymore. The child support and spousal support took most of my income, but because I didn't know what else to do. Work was all I'd ever known. It was all I was good at. 6 years. 6 years of holidays spent alone. 6 years of birthdays no one acknowledged. 6 years of silence broken only by monthly payments deducted from my bank account. Automated reminders that I'd once had a family, that they were still out there somewhere, living lives I wasn't part of. I kept working, kept going to therapy. Dr. Morrison helped me understand that I'd confused presence with providing, love with labor. She helped me see that my own childhood, growing up poor with a father who drank away every paycheck, had left me terrified of financial insecurity, so terrified that I'd sacrificed emotional security to prevent it. You were trying to be the father you needed, she told me, but your children needed something different. I learned to sit with the guilt instead of running from it. Learned to acknowledge my failures without letting them consume me. Learned that sometimes you can do your best and still cause harm, that good intentions don't erase hurt. I thought about reaching out, wrote letters I never sent, drafted emails that stayed in my folder, picked up the phone 100 times and couldn't bring myself to dial. What would I say? Sorry didn't seem big enough. Explanations felt like excuses. And they'd made it clear they didn't want to hear from me anyway. So I lived in my silence, and they lived in theirs, and the years accumulated like dust on furniture no one used anymore. I dated a little bit, nothing serious. Most women ran when they heard the story. A man whose entire family disowned him must be a monster, right? Even when I explained, even when they seemed to understand at first, eventually they'd pull away. The damage was too deep, the rejection too complete. I was damaged goods, a cautionary tale. The father in the story everyone tells about what not to become. I made peace with loneliness, learned to cook for one, learned to watch movies alone, learned to celebrate my birthday by taking myself to dinner and pretending the empty chair across from me wasn't a wound that never healed. I wondered about them constantly. Checked Sarah's social media from fake accounts she'd never blocked because she didn't know they were me. Saw her graduate high school. Saw her get into medical school, Johns Hopkins. She'd made it, my brilliant daughter. Saw photos of her looking happy, healthy, surrounded by friends and Jennifer and Michael. Saw Michael's LinkedIn profile through Google searches, tracked his career. He'd gotten his degree, got hired by a great firm, was doing well, living in Seattle now, engaged to a woman named Emma who looked kind in her photos. They'd moved on, built lives, found happiness without me. And I was what? I was the ghost they'd escaped, the mistake they'd learned from. The remember when story they probably told at therapy or over wine with friends. Remember when we had to cut out that toxic father figure? Best decision we ever made. I tried to move on too. Really tried. But how do you move on from the people who were supposed to be your entire world? How do you grieve someone who's still alive but dead to you? How do you forgive yourself for failing the only job that ever really mattered? Being someone your children wanted in their lives? And then, 6 years and 2 months and 14 days after my son said he never wanted to see my face again, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Michael. I stared at that name on my screen like it was a hallucination. Like if I blinked, it would disappear and I'd realize I'd fallen asleep watching TV again, dreaming of impossible things. But the phone kept ringing. Real, solid, undeniable. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I answered on the fifth ring, right before it would have gone to voicemail. Hello? My voice came out as a whisper. Silence on the other end. Not empty silence, I could hear breathing. Someone was there. Hello? I tried again. Michael? More breathing, shaky, uneven. And then, Dad? That word. That one word. After 6 years of silence, after 6 years of being erased, after 6 years of being the villain in their story, he called me Dad. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. Dad, are you there? I'm here, I managed. I'm here, son. Another long silence. I waited. I'd waited 6 years. I could wait a little longer. He stopped, started again. Something happened. Something. I don't know who else to call. What happened? Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm not hurt. His voice cracked. Emma left me. My fiancée. She left. And I'm standing here in our apartment. Our apartment that's not ours anymore because she's gone. And I realized I had no one to call. No one who would. He was crying. My son was crying. And every instinct I had was screaming at me to fix it, to make it better, to protect him from pain even though I was the source of so much of his pain. Michael, I said softly, I'm here. Whatever you need, I'm here. I don't know why I called you, he said, and there was confusion in his voice. After everything, after what I said, after years of nothing. But I'm sitting here and I'm falling apart and you're the only person I could think of. And I don't even know if I have the right to call you anymore, but you have the right, I interrupted. You always have the right. You're my son. That never changed. Not once. Not for a single second in 6 years. He sobbed then, a sound so broken it split me open. I'm so angry at you, he said through his tears. I'm still so angry, but I'm lost, Dad. I'm so lost, and I don't know what to do. Emma said I'm just like you, that I work all the time, that I'm never present, that I give her money and security, but not myself. And I got angry, I defended myself, I said I was nothing like you. But then she left and I looked around and realized she was right. I am you. I became exactly what I hated. And I don't know how to fix it. The irony was a knife twisting in my chest. My son had spent his life resenting me for my failures, and now he was failing in exactly the same ways. The cycle had continued despite his best intentions. Maybe because of them. Michael, I said carefully, do you want advice? Or do you just need someone to listen? He laughed, bitter and wet. I don't know. Both? Neither? I don't know anything anymore. Then I'll listen. Tell me everything. Start wherever you need to start. And he did. He talked for 2 hours. Talked about Emma, about how they'd met in grad school, about how he'd loved her but had slowly drifted away as his career consumed him. Talked about fights that sounded exactly like the ones Jennifer and I used to have. Talked about how he'd told himself he was different, better, working hard for his future family, not instead of being present with them. He talked about realizing Emma was right, that he'd been so busy trying to not be me that he'd become me anyway, that the fear of failure had made him work himself into the ground, had made him prioritize success over connection, security over love. And then, hesitantly, carefully, he talked about us. I was so angry at you, he said, for so long. I blamed you for everything that was wrong in my life. Mom was angry, so I was angry. Sarah was hurt, so I was hurt. And it was easier to have a villain than to understand that life is complicated, that people are complicated, that you were just a human doing your best and your best wasn't enough, but you were trying. I wasn't trying hard enough, I said. Not in the ways that mattered. I know. But neither was I, it turns out. Neither was Mom, honestly. We broke. And instead of trying to fix it together, we just pointed fingers until everyone was covered in blame. Michael, I failed you. I know that. I knew it then, and I've known it every day since. And I'm sorrier than I have words for. I know, he said quietly. I think I've always known. But I needed you to be the bad guy. It was simpler that way. Cleaner. If you were just a neglectful father, then I didn't have to deal with the complicated truth that you loved us, but didn't know how to show it in the way we needed. That you were wounded, and you wounded us from your wounds. That hurt people, even when they're trying their hardest not to. We sat in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable silence. Not anymore. What do I do? He finally asked. About Emma. About everything. I can't tell you what to do, I said. But I can tell you what I learned, if you want to hear it. Please. Providing isn't the same as loving. Security isn't the same as presence. You can give someone everything and still give them nothing if you're not actually there. The people we love don't need our money or our success. They need us, our time, our attention, our vulnerability. They need to know they matter more than our jobs, our fears, our pride. But how do you balance it? He asked. How do you provide and be present? How do you make money to survive and have time for the people you love? I don't know, I admitted. I never figured that out, but I think I went too far in one direction because I was so afraid of going too far in the other. My dad was worthless, drunk, jobless, absent, so I became the opposite, sober, employed, constantly present through work. But I missed the middle ground. I missed that you can work hard without working yourself to death, that you can provide without sacrificing presence. That balance is possible, even if it's hard. Is it too late? He whispered. With Emma? I don't know. Maybe. But whether or not you can fix things with her, you can learn from this. You can decide to be different going forward. You can choose presence over proving yourself. You can choose connection over comfort. It's not too late for your life, Michael. It's never too late to change. More silence, then, Dad? Yeah? I'm sorry for what I said. For cutting you out. For all of it. You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve the way we treated you. My eyes were burning. You were hurt. People lash out when they're hurt. That's not an excuse. No, but it's an explanation. And I understand. I do. Can we... He hesitated. Can we maybe talk again? Not 6 years from now. Like, actually talk. Try to figure this out? Something in my chest that had been clenched for 6 years finally released. I would love that more than anything in the world. Okay. He sounded lighter. Still sad, but lighter. I should go. It's late. You're probably exhausted. I'm not, I said. I never get tired of hearing your voice. He laughed, a real laugh this time. Dad, that's corny as hell. Your dad's a corny guy, always was. Yeah, yeah, you were. Michael? Yeah? Thank you for calling. Thank you for giving me another chance. I won't waste it. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. This is the one promise I know I can keep. We hung up. I sat there in my silent apartment with my phone in my hands and I cried again, but this time the tears were different. They weren't tears of grief or rage or hopelessness. They were tears of something I'd forgotten existed. Possibility. One phone call hadn't erased 6 years. One conversation hadn't fixed everything that was broken. But it was a crack in the wall. A tiny opening. A chance. And sometimes, when you've been living in darkness for long enough, even the smallest crack of light feels like a miracle. It's been 3 months since that call. Michael and I talk once a week now. Just phone calls at first, then video calls. We're careful with each other. Gentle. Learning how to be in each other's lives again without reopening wounds that haven't fully healed. He's working on things with Emma. They're in couples counseling. It's hard, he tells me. Really hard. But she agreed to try, which means there's hope. He tells me about his days now. Not just the big things, but the small things. What he had for breakfast. A funny thing a coworker said. How he's trying to leave work at work. How he's making himself walk away from his desk at 5 p.m. How he's practicing being present. And I tell him about my days too. About therapy. About the book I'm reading. About how I'm learning to live with myself, to forgive myself, to understand that being a bad husband and father doesn't make me a bad person. Just a flawed one who tried and failed and is still learning. Sarah reached out last month. Michael told her we'd been talking. She was skeptical at first. He said she interrogated him for an hour about why he'd forgiven me, what had changed, how he could just forget everything that happened. But then she called me. I'm not ready to see you, were her first words. I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but Michael said you're different, that you're trying. And I guess I want to understand why you weren't trying before. It was painful. That conversation. She asked me questions I didn't have good answers to. She told me things I'd missed in her life. Her college graduation, her acceptance to med school, her first serious relationship, her struggles with anxiety. I sat there and listened to the life she'd lived without me, all the moments I should have been there for, and I apologized for every single one. Apologies don't change the past, she said. No, they don't. But maybe they can change the future, if you let them. We talk now, too. Not as often as Michael and I do. But we talk. She's guarded. Careful. She doesn't call me Dad, just uses my name, David, like I'm some distant relative she's trying to get to know. But she calls, that's something. Jennifer and I haven't spoken directly. Michael says she knows we're in contact again. He says she's not happy about it, but she's not actively opposed either. She's moved on. Dating someone new, Michael mentioned. Someone named Daniel, actually. The coffee shop man from all those years ago. I hope he makes her happy. I really do. I hope he's better at being present than I was. I hope he knows how to love her the way she deserved to be loved. I'm different now. Not perfect. I'll never be perfect. But different. I still work, but I don't let work consume me. I've cut back to one job. I make less money, but I have more time. Time to read. Time to think. Time to call my children and actually listen when they talk. I'm learning what I should have learned 20 years ago, that the people we love don't need us to be perfect providers. They need us to be imperfect people who show up anyway, who try, who fail, who try again. They need us to be human, not heroes. Dr. Morrison says I'm making progress. That acknowledging failure without being destroyed by it is one of the hardest things a person can do. You're learning to hold two truths at once, she told me in our last session. That you failed your family and that you're still worthy of love. That you caused harm and that you can still heal. That the past is fixed, but the future is not. I think about that a lot now. The idea that I can be both the father who failed and the father who's trying, the husband who didn't know how to connect, and the man who's learning, the person I was and the person I'm becoming. Some days are harder than others. Some days I'm overwhelmed with grief for everything I lost, for the years I can't get back, for the man I was who didn't know how to be better. But then my phone rings, and it's Michael calling to tell me about his day, or Sarah asking my opinion on something even though she'll probably disagree with me. And I remember it's not too late. It's never too late to try. Healing isn't linear. Forgiveness isn't instant. Trust isn't rebuilt in a day or a month or even a year. But my son called me after 6 years. He said he never wanted to see my face again, and then he called me for advice. And in that impossible moment, in that crack of light breaking through 6 years of darkness, I understood something I'd spent my whole life not understanding. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up, even when you failed before, even when you don't know what to say, even when the silence is heavy and the wounds are deep. It's about answering the phone at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night and saying, "I'm here, whatever you need, I'm here." And meaning it. Sometimes the people you love the most become the ones who hurt you the deepest. Sometimes you become the person who hurts them. Sometimes everyone is wounded and everyone is wounding and everyone is just trying to survive the best way they know how. But sometimes, rarely, miraculously, impossibly sometimes, you get a second chance. Not to erase the past, not to pretend the hurt never happened, but to acknowledge it, to learn from it, to become better because of it. I didn't lose a family that night in June when Michael walked out. I lost a version of family that was already broken, already bleeding out from years of invisible wounds. But I'm building something new now. Slowly, carefully, honestly. A relationship with my son where we talk about real things. A fragile connection with my daughter that might someday grow into something more. A life where I'm not defined by my worst mistakes, but not absolved of them either. I'm learning to hold both truths. I was a bad father. I can become a better one. I failed. I can still try. I lost them. They're giving me another chance. And if I've learned anything from this long, painful journey through betrayal and grief and impossible second chances, it's this. Redemption doesn't erase what came before, but it gives you something to build toward. And sometimes, when you're standing in the ruins of everything you destroyed, that's enough. That has to be enough. Because when your son says, "I never want to see your face again," and then calls you 6 years later in the middle of the night because he has nowhere else to turn, you don't get to refuse the opportunity. You don't get to say it's too late or too hard or too painful. You answer the phone, you say, "I'm here," and you mean it with every broken, beating piece of your heart. That's what I'm doing now. Every day, every call, every careful conversation. I'm showing up. I'm being present. I'm trying. And maybe, just maybe, that's what love actually looks like when you strip away all the expectations and the failures and the years of hurt. Maybe love is just continuing to try, even when you've already failed. Maybe that's all any of us can do. Show up, be present, keep trying, and hope that's enough. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to make things right with the people you've hurt, I want you to know. It might be. Some wounds don't heal. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Some people will never forgive you, and that's their right. But it also might not be too late. You won't know until you try, until you pick up the phone, until you say the words you're terrified to say, until you acknowledge the harm you caused and commit to doing better, not for forgiveness, but because it's the right thing to do. My son said he never wanted to see my face again. 6 years later, he called me for advice. Life is strange like that. Painful, impossible, sometimes miraculous. I don't know how this story ends. I don't know if Sarah will ever call me dad again. I don't know if Michael and I will rebuild something that looks like a father-son relationship, or if we'll always be just two men who share DNA and hurt each other deeply. but I know I'm trying. And I know that when you've lived in darkness for 6 years, even the smallest light feels like coming home. So I'll keep answering the phone. I'll keep showing up. I'll keep trying. Because that's what you do when you're given a second chance you never thought you'd get. You don't waste it. Not this time. Never again.